Welcome to We Do, the officially unofficial podcast for Watchmen on HBO. I'm Jim.
I'm A.Ron.
And we're one of just 39 podcasts answering the question, who watches The Watchmen? We did watch The Watchmen, that's for sure. Watched the first episode. It's summer and we're running out of ice. A.Ron, after we did the instant take, how has your opinion evolved?
I really liked the episode when I first watched it, and I think I like it more. One of the big criticisms I had or not even criticisms, the one thing I was worried about is that this might be just a little too matchy, just like it's our world, like through a looking glass, through a funhouse mirror. And you just black is white and good is bad and corrupt is, it's like just flip everything. And that felt a little too lazy, but I feel like they are, like the comic book, engaging in a lot of, moral gray area, because it's not just you have, militant black police officers going against like these far right wing racial supremacists, right? There's also this element that the racists actually have a correct understanding of a very important event in the world.
Right.
But
they run with that maybe a little too in the wrong direction, let's say.
Yeah, and the cops who are the quote, you'd think of as the good guys are just this is some East German fascist shit that's going on in this world, where it's like, yeah, the cops have like muzzles on their weapons, but like, again, I don't know what the rules are on the masks, but they don't have any fucking restrictions like that. And there's no lawyers you provide. I mean, a lot of chilling stuff. So it's like, it's not just that already from what I'm seeing. It's a lot more nuanced, and I don't know. I mean, that's my opinion. I'm sure there's some people who could say it's still hacky or they're disappointed. They're hoping it went further, but I don't know, because about it going further, because it seems like it's really pissed off some of the piss-offable portions of the internet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as soon as I heard what this show was about and that it was going to open with this Black Wall Street scene, I was like, this is going to be divisive as fuck.
Right.
And that's the point of this thing. Like, if you thought you were going to get out of this particular show without having your feelings hurt or your opinions challenged, you're watching the wrong show.
Sure.
So
I just think I was looking on Rotten Tomatoes just before we started, and the Watchmen as a series boasts a 96% critical fresh rating and a 48% audience rating. And you just go through, and all the 1-star reviews are just like, they've ruined Watchmen with politics, and I'm like, man, The Watchmen is many things, but apolitical. Get the fuck out of here. So, but yeah, if you thought that The Watchmen was just dark superheroes beating the shit out of people, and you walked away thinking Rorschach was the quote unquote good guy, or what were you saying? You read someone's called
he's the moral compass.
The moral
of the
compass,
show, which blew my fucking mind that you would say that.
Yeah, like is it possible to come up with a good faith reading of The Watchmen and come away from that? Or is that a person that's never read The Watchmen and has just watched
someone who ignored every bad thing he said about gay people in that entire fucking comic.
Or a lot of people, I saw a lot of people on Reddit getting hung up on the fact that like Rorschach has been reframed as a white supremacist. And like
that's not actually true. Like the people who have those tendencies have run with his ethos,
right,
and turned it into that. He's now a symbol for white supremacy because they've made him that, not because he was that.
Yeah, and if Rorschach wasn't in fact a racist, and there's very little direct evidence that he many things he's a homophobe, he's bigoted in other things, he fucking hates women, but. That's like one of the only check boxes he doesn't check off in like a far right, kind of radical mindset. So
and it may just be because that was an error of omission, right? Like,
well, plus
maybe that's supposed to be there, but it just didn't make it into the comic book. So
you also know, I mean, this is something if you didn't read the comic, maybe even recently, but some of the extra informations between each, government dossier shit. There was some clippings from the actual newspaper, the New Frontiersman. And it's like their political cartoons are super fucking racist. The editor like stumps for the KKK. So like this is Rorschach's favorite journal. I mean, like I
you could
said,
draw some inferences. Perhaps
it's not coming out of nowhere. And also, just even if they took his base framework and perverted it into white supremacy,
Exactly.
it's like that's also a perfectly believable thing to happen.
Yeah, and it seems like that could be what happened. There are these things called the PD files, which we're going to go into.
Yes.
Which I almost don't want those words to leave my mouth. It sounds too close to pedophile.
That's not intentional, is it?
It could be. It's a Rorschach. I don't know. There was the whole thing with Rorschach and that girl that he saved or was hunting and didn't save.
So maybe the PD file is because he seems like he's I don't know. I don't know what to think about him after reading his files. If you don't know what we're talking about, HBO's got a promotional website called thepdfiles.com, and they purport to be like excerpts from this agent in the FBI, a special agent on the anti-vigilante task force. His like thoughts on the disappearance of Ozymandias. There is a news clipping from a re-release of this Black Marshall film from the beginning. There's a whole bunch of just extra material that like I don't know how they're framing it. It's been recovered from this FBI agent or whatever.
It goes quite a ways into explaining why the technology is not where we expect it in 2019, which I was happy to see.
And the thing is so it's a lot of great world building because I don't know that we needed to get the answers for like why does the world not adopted cell phones and internet. That seems crazy.
Yeah.
But it's cool that they built them in, and it'd be even cooler if they find some way to fold this information back into the storytelling of the TV show.
And we'll talk about it. In pretty close up detail here pretty soon. But for now, why don't we get into the recap? We start off with a silent movie opening sequence of Bass Reeves arresting a corrupt sheriff, which transitions into the 1921 massacre of the black people in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Amidst the carnage, some parents hide their child away in a carriage, and this carriage takes off, but it's overturned, and the battered child awakes later that night to find himself all alone with the dead except for a baby, which he finds crying in the grass. This is affecting. This opening is very affecting.
Yes, it's really. I mean, it's very effective to see like the innocence of this young boy being shattered, and go from like just ultimate bliss of watching one of his heroes on the big screen to having the ultimate like looking glass perversion of that worldview confront him on the outside.
And it seems by all accounts to be a pretty accurate representation of what happened there with the bombings.
I couldn't substantiate the player piano. But like damn near everything else was like the depiction of the looting, the persecution of like the firefighters to keep them from like actually doing their job,
even down to like a potential photograph that they used of a child standing in the street with a baby in his arms. Which we see obviously portrayed at the end of this scene, but also during the carnage, during the chaos, there's a child standing in the street holding a baby.
But it's really good. I did some more reading about because some of these things are incredible, like the fact that they were bombing this place with planes and shooting from rifles, and they mentioned that like in the contemporary articles of the time, the white attackers are claiming that the air patrol was for like in case there was a Negro uprising. And it was just for reconnaissance. But I found out that this William Simmons, who is a Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, was appointed head of the Air Knights Division in May 20th, 1921. This is in Oklahoma. The organization was described as a fraternal organization of former Air Force officers. 10 days later, they're bombing Tulsa, Oklahoma, the black neighborhoods of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So it's like...
Wow.
This feels pretty fucking orchestrated. Yeah. Like they were like looking for an excuse to do something like this. There's also a really interesting note literally the note that watch over this boy was written. Did you catch this? It's written on the back of a piece of World War I German propaganda.
Okay, yeah, I didn't dig into it. I just saw that.
Yeah, it was in English, and it was entitled "To All Colored Soldiers of the States," and it said, "You've been told a bunch of lies about Germany, that we shoot prisoners of war on sight, that we mistreat them, that we don't feed them or house them," and it's like essentially that all that's not true. All the white people in your army hate you. Come to Germany and chill out for the rest of the war, as a way to kind of like break the morale of the black troops fighting in the war. So I thought that's interesting. Also framing his this child's father as like a World War I soldier. I saw that too. That was like when so this all started over an accusation of a white woman that she was sexually assaulted by a black boy, 19-year-old. And this had been brewing over the course of a couple of days of increasing calls for mob violence. And like, there's like the black community is kind of split on what to do. You had a whole bunch of young servicemen for World War I being like, fuck, we still got our weapons and stuff. Let's take care of this. And then you had the wealthier black businessmen that were like, we kind of want to keep a cooler head. And, then the result is, what we see here on the screen. But yeah, I'm glad I caught the parallels to the Superman comic book story too, because like everybody was discussing this in the next day or two. The fact that Tulsa was depicted as this Kryptonian utopia that he's escaping. What
Superman famously has a baby that he carts around.
He does. That was Superboy. It turned up. He was Superman. I thought it was an interesting thing that Hooded Justice in the comics is stated to start his crime fighting career in 1938, which is when Superman debuted in the real world. So it's like it's like I love that the parallels are really tightly knitted together there.
Yeah, keep the kid in mind here and the note and everything in mind. Because we're going to be talking about Hooded Justice, I get the feeling, a little later in this episode.
But there's a lot of great visual details. Like the little boy like hunkered down in a box as the bullets are whizzing through, and him looking at just the absolute savagery through those bullet holes. Him with the child looking back over in his arms, looking back over this his shoulder, and just like the entire horizon is on fire. Even someone pointed out on Reddit that like he had a streak of blood on his head that's very similar to the comedian's button with the blood drip. That's all throughout the episode. There's so many references to that, but that's an early first one, and I love how they're using those visual themes to tie this back to the source material.
Yeah, you could almost see this as the instigating moment, right? Because you think of the Watchmen and the instigation for the whole comic book and movie is the death of the comedian. You could almost see this as the inciting event of everything that's to come later, right?
Yeah, it's all back to faces with blood smeared on it.
All right, then we transition to modern day, and a member of the 7th Cavalry is pulled over. The cop wants to arrest him, so he goes to his car to request his weapon be unlocked. It's too late, though, and he's gunned down in his car. And he's hit with a head of lettuce, which I don't understand the meaning of.
I don't either. I did notice on the second watch that because I thought this guy was just dead and was shocked that he was living in the newspaper, shocked that he was living in the hospital. But when the guy throws the lettuce, it hits the officer and he kind of goes like, oh, and then you can kind of tell that he's alive, but either faking death or in shock, or I don't know. Maybe he's fallen bald move rule number 1.
Yeah, play dead.
If you're ever shot up and it's bad, just fucking play dead. Don't wiggle around and try to attract attention that you're not. So maybe it's a successful employment of that rule. Maybe he was just in shock. But
yeah, I did have a hard time believing he could survive that many gunshots, even if he's wearing a vest. I saw quite a bit of blood. What's the response time on something like that? Because he said, "Yeah, we're all good." Are the cops monitoring like his dash cam or something from afar?
Well, they don't have wireless technology,
but they do. I mean, you can look at like the well, I guess if you've got communications gear, I find it hard to believe you don't have video transmittal gear. Right, because I know they're communicating between Archie and the ground in the cow scene.
Yeah, video, voice, sure, but like
there's fundamentally no difference.
Yeah, but like. I don't know, because before the internet, if you wanted to do like a transmit, like you've seen the local news wagons, like at those that giant transmitter tower.
Yeah,
like that's how you transmit video. You have to have like big special equipment. I thought it's not like you can just have like a fucking rubber ducky antenna and breaker 469er. Here comes a full video. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, sure.
It's scientific fact. There's not enough. You can't
spectrum.
send video images through the air. There's never been.
Can't happen.
It's got to go through Wi-Fi or cellular network.
Right.
Never
Anyway,
in the history of mankind.
This is all going a very long way to patch over what I think is a rocky bit of the episode, because I don't buy that this guy survived, but
yeah,
he did.
Well, I mean, is he wearing a vest or something? Because that's
but vests only does so much.
Yeah,
and I saw a lot of blood in that car.
Yeah,
he got hit with like 20 bullets.
Yeah.
Anyway, I find it ironic that this guy in the opening part of this scene is rocking out to what you should call a black man's music, like made by black man, and this fucking asshole, this racist fuck, is sitting there rocking out to it, like he's got any right to.
I know it's an interesting detail, but it doesn't seem implausible.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
I agree with that. It was just ironic.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's a lot of subtle world building here, I guess, like with cameras and the releasing of the guns. The
battery powered.
We kind of come back to later.
Battery powered cars, like all the cars in this. With the 7th Cavalry guy seemed like it was a retrofit because his
the gas gauge on empty.
Exactly, but he's got this like tacked on like battery gauge. So I think that's interesting.
And he's got to be hauling something other than lettuce, right? I mean, what's the?
I think it's
unless he just knows he's caught and he.
So he's the same guy to get suicide pilled later on this episode. So I think I'm imagining he's hauling what just bushels and bushels of wristwatches.
I guess so.
With old Manhattan batteries in them. Mm-hmm. But like shit, I would have showed the cop that.
Yeah, is it illegal?
What are you hauling? I'm hauling
or...
old timepieces. It's a hobby of mine. Like,
yeah,
nothing fucking illegal about it. But then again, maybe not keep your Rorschach mask in your glove compartment right next to the license and registration that all cops will ask if you get pulled over. Like, Jesus, dude.
Yeah.
Maybe not take any 7th Cavalry paraphernalia with you at all.
Maybe not. Be a part of the 7th Cavalry at all.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's probably his mistake. Sure.
Yeah.
That's the big one. But don't try to break more than one law at a time. Like, don't have your clan paraphernalia and your harmless mishmash pile of battery included merchandise. Because there's nothing wrong with hauling that.
I wouldn't think so. I will say it's curious that the response, or I guess not the response, but the aftermath of whatever white night that Sister Night mentions, where the cops were attacked, she was shot, and all that, seems to have led to the restriction of weapons. I would not think that would be an inevitable outcome of an event like that. I would think almost it would have the opposite effect, to where the police force would be more militant, more.
Well, maybe that's a compromise. Like, okay, you guys want to wear masks, but we're going to restrict your ability to use deadly force. I could see that as a compromise. Now, in the real world, do I think it? No, I think the cops would keep their, like, if there's a big like hunting of cops, I think they would get the masks and the guns. But it's an interesting compromise. Or the other thing I was wondering if maybe there's another reason that the cops have to get gun authorization, and the White Knight is not related. Like that's before, like maybe there's like some kind of riots in the early 2000s where cops got out of hand, comedian style, and
a lot of it seems to be a consequence of Robert Redford as a president, which maybe we'll get to here in a second.
Why do you say that?
Well, he's a notable in this world liberal president.
Oh, okay. So
and he's been in power for 30 years.
That he's just pushing liberal policies, like
right, and a lot of the complaints of the 7th Cavalry are about the liberal president pushing liberal agendas. Right. One of those things being gun control.
Well, and a constant theme in the 80s, like there's a whole genre of vigilante porn in the 70s and 80s, like what's that one with death mark or shit.
Oh, the Charles Bronson movie?
Yes, that's exactly like,
Yeah.
and Dirty Harry's all this theme of like, oh, these liberals are soft on crime,
Yeah.
making worse and worse criminals.
I mean, it's
like,
everybody. Chuck Norris was doing that. Everybody was doing that shit.
I mean, RoboCop is essentially that same story. Is like, if you soft on criminals, you're gonna. So it was definitely it's something interesting in the milieu of the Watchmen's culture, and how like that's the intoxicating thing. It's like, we know 30 years have elapsed. We know the world is weird and it's got squid storms. What and it doesn't have the internet. What else? What else are we going to find out about it?
We're going to find out that Oklahoma is still playing.
Well, of course it is.
Yeah, has been performed around the world numerous times from the time that this dude was a teenager until now. I'm sure even before then.
But has there ever been a Black Lahoma?
Apparently, yeah. I know she refers to it as Black Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're treated to this part of the stage play. The chief of police is sort of pulled out of this play to deal with the cop shooting. We find out that he's alive. And there's a mirror-masked man who we will... I think they call him Looking Glass in this. I'm not sure if they ever say it. They say LG a couple of times.
Lot, right.
Yeah, but that's Looking Glass. He tells him they can't find the suspect, and the chief wonders why the 7th Cavalry is starting this shit up again, as he says.
But also the chief's kind of like pumping the brakes on it too. It's like, it probably is, but we don't want to start a war over this. Yeah. I also like the casual dehumanizing of like using his face as a mirror. Like, hey, pull your face down so I can straighten my tie.
Well, I like that he calls it his face, because that's what Rorschach referred to his mask as, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Clearly, they're wanting me to draw a parallel between this guy and Rorschach, but it does seem like, I mean, I didn't get the hint that like Looking Glass was anything but like True Blue for getting to the bottom of the 7th Cavalry stuff in a way that like obviously you were supposed to doubt Don Johnson's Judd's true intentions towards the matter.
Right. Yeah.
So like
I mean, Looking Glass and Red and Sister Night, they're all like the Minutemen, right? These are officially sanctioned vigilantes,
right, that
the government employs to do the things that the cops can't do.
So I wonder if we're going to see like because that was Rorschach. One of the things happening in the background of the Watchmen is telling the story of Rorschach started as like a good vigilante, and then through through him being radicalized by stuff like the New Frontiersman and just his experience with violent criminals, he lost his grip on right and wrong. Right, I'm not even sure if that's true. He just brutalized and killed a lot of criminals. I wonder if they're telling the same stories. Like this guy is like going to start off as like a good vigilante, and then is he going to sympathize with the 7th Cavalry? Well,
no. I mean, the story of Rorschach is one of going after bad guys. Like clearly, these were bad people who were doing bad things, but his means were a little more radical than the ends justified, right?
But what would it do to a guy like that to find out your boss, who's a police chief, possibly involved in the things that you're trying to fight against? Like, what would that do to your morality or what you see as good and virtuous versus feudal? I think that might be something they explore with this character.
Yeah, we still don't know the full involvement or level of agency of these vigilantes. What are we calling them? The Watchmen?
I mean,
are they the Watchmen?
They call them masks? Like, isn't that what they call them
masks,
in Watchmen? I think.
Yeah, we still don't know exactly their role in this whole society. So.
What are their rules of engagement?
Yeah. And then obviously, they're using his face as a mirror throughout this episode, sort of holding up in a sort of Rorschach-esque way. It's hard to say. Holding a mirror up to these bad guys and saying, "What do you look at yourself? What do you see?" Like, it's not what do you see in this image, but it does reflect you, right? That's the whole thing of the Rorschach. It reflects your mental state. Yeah. And then it's showing you that, which I think is interesting. So the chief has to tell the wife of the shot cop what happened. He makes some inquiries about how they kept his status as a cop secret, and they get their story straight, and then he tries to comfort her briefly.
That's another thing I found fascinating, the fact that like all police have to have cover stories.
Yeah.
Like
a baker.
Yeah, or I work nights at the local gym, or like
you would think there would just be so many stories of like uncovered cops just constantly.
That's what I'm talking about. I was trying to think of how does that work. So like no, I guess that all checks out if you're supposed to be someplace else. But like, does anyone ever check? Or it just seems like it would be hard to keep up that double life, and there'd have to be a whole bunch of official covers and like what if someone finds out that the bakery doesn't have an active, it's been coming soon for 5 years. Yeah. Like when I'm just wondering the mechanics of how all this like massive witness protection agency, but they're active duty cops, how that actually works. Mm-hmm. It seems like maybe mistakes do happen, and just because of the officer's humanity and them not having perfect operational security, that's a big concern. Yeah. that they don't observe all the security, because like there's a lot of like, did you tell anybody, or did anyone
and yet the chief of police just showing his face everywhere.
I do believe that what you said in the instant cast is correct, that obviously that he's somehow compromised by these racists and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it also wouldn't surprise me that that's another compromise of these like mass cops, is like their top cop someone has to ultimately be held accountable for the actions of a police, right? So this guy, like, that's the part of being police, and the benefit is you live in this giant mansion compound and you're guarded by like several dozen police officers day and night, but like you do have to have that accountability. It is amazing he just goes out in public, like to screenings of Oklahoma or live showings of Oklahoma.
Risky.
Yeah. And then you wonder how much of that is him working, because it would also not surprise me. Actually, let's talk about that later when the theories about like who he was working for and all that. Wait until the man dies before we start talking ill of him.
All right.
That's what you're supposed to do, right? Wait for someone to die, and then you talk shit about him.
Absolutely.
Because then they can't do anything back. It's perfect. It's a nice axiom.
All right, so it's Bring Your Parents to School Day, and Angela Abar, Abar, I don't exactly know how to say her name. She's a baker. She's teaching the class how to make mooncakes, just this bon via, Vietnamese thing. She gets a little too detailed in her explanation of why she retired from the police force, and then a student asks if, quote-unquote, Redford Dations paid for the bakery she currently owns, which causes her son to get up and attack the student. And I'm going to kind of pause there because there's a lot of shit that happens in these next couple of scenes. We find out at the beginning of this or I guess at the end of this, that Dr. Manhattan is currently on Mars.
Yes.
And he's fucking around with some model of, let's call him Ozymandias.
Okay.
I'm not 100% certain on that, but Ozymandias Castle that we'll see later. And this is live footage, so it is happening right now.
Right.
Because I was wondering about that in the instant take. Like, is this, historical footage from years ago? No, it's not.
There's a lot of interesting things happening. You got another of the comedian badge references with her separating the yolks and kind of arranging them into a smiley face, and one of the eggs had what do you call that thing in the yolk? Will turn into a chicken fetus if you let it. A pre-chicken embryo. It's a little streak of blood is what it looks like. So it's it's like a perfect reference to the badge. But she also is. It's the things she's saying I think is funny too. That like building strong walls. But if these whites are even touch a yolk, they completely crumble and dissolve. If they come into contact with the yolks, the whites can't be strong, so they all have to be separated. Like, it's very, very on the nose stuff, and I'm like, it seems almost too on the nose and broad for what the rest of the episode's doing.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely of a piece. I spent 2 hours maybe last night reading through Ta-Nehisi Coates' Case for Reparations, and coming away from that, hearing these lines, I'm like, oh well. I see what Lindelof's getting at. Like, it's quite obvious.
Sure.
It may be too obvious. You might be right.
But that's the thing, because having read that piece as well as some of his other books, like maybe I'm just too primed for it, and it's like jumping off the page.
It could be, yeah, because I think like if you don't know anything about Black Wall Street, which I didn't,
right?
I didn't even know it was a thing. and you don't really know much about like the history of modern history of black people in America, then you could end up coming away from this going, what, they're talking about egg whites.
Right.
But
I don't know.
But it's pretty fucking obvious.
I don't know. I'd like to sit like a random array of like high school freshmen, watch the scene. What do you think they're saying, guys?
Yeah. There's some things to note here about Angela's backstory, where she grew up in Vietnam.
Yep.
There's some overt references to that, which we'll talk about later. There's a mention of a white knight, as we discussed briefly. I assume that has something to do with the attack on the cops, though we don't get much information about it.
So I want to talk about this here. So she's born in Vietnam several years before it became the 51st state, which was, this is like during the Vietnam War, I'm guessing, or maybe just afterwards. Did you see the theory that Angela might be the comedian's daughter? Like that, there's a Vietnamese woman that the comedian impregnates in this series, and then he shoots her.
Yeah.
But then the last scene is like Dr. Manhattan kind of looking thoughtfully at her body, and there's a theory that like he somehow through his Manhattan powers saved the baby, and she was adopted, which would also explain why she's passionate about adopting other children.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what I think about it because, the comedian's white and the Vietnamese lady was Vietnamese. So unless they're going to retcon her in being a black woman.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the things I guess I'm taking for granted is that Damon Lindelof meant what he said, that he's not going to actually change anything about the comic book.
Okay.
But there's a little problem with that in Hood of Justice we'll talk about later too, or where I think they're going with Hood of Justice.
Okay.
So... But I don't know.
There's so much around Vietnam. If you go look at the PD files, there's so much there that we'll need to talk about when it comes to Ozymandias.
But the theory about the Dr. Manhattan saving Angela from the womb of a dead Vietnamese woman, I don't like it from a standpoint of like, Yoda doesn't have to be a great friend of Chewbacca.
Okay. Not everything needs to
Anakin
connect.
Doesn't have to invent C-3PO.
Yeah.
And there's already a lot of connections between the old series and new series, living characters, whatnot. Like, if literally everything is connected.
And they've already done Descendant of the Mask becomes a mask, right? I mean, Silk Spectre is that. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It might be a little too cute and it doesn't quite line up.
Sure.
And then Redfordations is also mentioned as a thing here, and obviously you can sort of infer that there were some form of reparations paid, and I think it was in the form of not having to pay taxes.
I saw some people, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right. And the reason they call them Redfordations is because President Robert Redford is the one who distributed those.
Right. Yeah, because like when I think of reparations, I think there's some kind of cash settlement paid out to somebody. And
so one of the things is the question that when they're in the pod, the question that Looking Glass asks this 7K guy, one of the questions is, do you think all Americans should pay taxes? And he answers, yes, I believe.
See, I just like, knowing
which
some
is
of the...
part of that,
right.
the racism that he detects in there.
It's possible, but like if you hang around like really far right areas, like really extreme branches of libertarian like sovereign citizen types, they think that like taxation is theft and illegal and unconstitutional, and there is a fucking takeover by admiralty law of the Constitution back in the late 18th century, and that so they get worked up about it, and I thought it's like a test for that. It's kind of like what are your views on a bunch of different things? I never even connected that like he would be irate that black people aren't paying taxes because they're black.
Yeah. But
that does also make sense.
It could be, yeah. There was one other thing that I can't remember that might have tied it to that, but I found it a little more dubious. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm interested to see President Robert Redford. I know he's going to be in this series. Is he
really? Because I read conflicting things.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Well, just people saying that he, very publicly retired from acting.
Oh yeah, but then they said he came out of retirement to do this.
Oh, did
so,
okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping at least. Actually, in this scene, you see him. There's a sign in the background.
Well, but like if it's stock footage of him,
Yeah.
like
It's not even stock. It's just a photograph.
Right. That's what I'm
but
saying.
But they say like 4 important presidents, and they show Washington, Lincoln, Nixon, and
or if they
Redford.
get Robert Redford just waving at people from a crowd as flashbulbs are going off, and say, like, is that him coming out of retirement?
Yeah, not really.
Like Carrie Fisher, you know,
you could have just got a candid of him in his swimming pool in his backyard.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And then Photoshop the face on a suit.
I was thinking like Carrie Fisher and Peter Cushing in Star Wars. Does that mean they're unretired from being dead?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no.
Officially.
No.
They're looking for work right now.
Yep.
All right, Angela and her son talk about why he attacked the student. Suddenly, this alarm goes off, and tiny squids rain down from the sky for about 10 seconds. They clean their windshield, and they head off home.
I noticed on subsequent watches that the cars, like, they park in all kind of like this pell-mell, like helter-skelter fashion on the road, and when they do the wide shots, it looks like the early scenes from like The Leftovers.
Okay.
Like some kind of apocalypse is hit.
I mean,
because
these
these cars have
felt
been abandoned. Yeah.
So Leftovers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this random event that comes out of nowhere for us as viewers. It gave me strong Leftovers vibes, and I really liked it.
But it's also great world building because this is not like a freak thing. This is somewhat routine to the fact that people have their special alarms for it.
Yeah.
They got special squid squeegees. The cities have squid removal trucks. Like, it's pretty interesting. Now, do we think that this is something that's happening because of some runaway genetic engineering that Veidt did with the psychic squid attack,
this
or
weakening of the dimensional membrane or whatever? Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that, but like because he was a world-class genetic engineer, and that psychic squid was some kind of like fucking freakish genetic project he did. Like if that got into the wild and just making, you know, storm squids versus the government actually spraying it out from a high altitude plane, like what I'm getting is this like just fallout from the fake alien attack, or is this the government
is this a new cover up
actually knowing what's up and preserving the fragile peace by scaring people every now and then?
It's a good question. So if you look in those PD files, PD clearly does not think that this was a manufactured event, right?
I don't think so. I think people were interpreting, in the places I've seen this being discussed, were interpreting some of his statements going both ways. But my read was that no, he thinks that the squid attacks are real.
Yeah. And that people who would claim that they're not, that they're a vast conspiracy
that they're kooks.
By Veidt, they're kooks.
Yeah, yeah.
And he lays a lot of that at the feet of Rorschach, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know what the answer is. I assume clearly with 7 to 9 more, I don't remember how many episodes we're going to get. We're going to get a lot more info on this, and that's one of the hooks that Lindelof always has, is that mystery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, this is the big one.
Gotta know where the stinky squid are coming from.
Yep. All right, how do you clean those off the roof of your house?
I was thinking that too.
Like the sun's just gonna bake those fuckers.
You can
on
spray
there.
them off the sidewalks, the kid stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that out of your storm drains. Get that shit out of your shingles.
Yeah.
Maybe they have squid-resistant shingles now. They're coated in Teflon, so they just slide right off.
I mean, the sewer systems alone, just full of... I guess they do dissolve into, like, nothing, don't they?
Do they?
Isn't that what the giant squid did?
I don't remember. That seems familiar, yeah.
Like
and these were
but
I wasn't sure if these were dissolving or they just like were destroyed on impact. You know, like you drop a squid from several thousand feet. I think they're going to dissolve on impact.
All right, we get to Angela's house, and she gets a message on her pager that says Little Bighorn, and she rushes off to her bakery, where an old man asks her when the bakery is opening and if she thinks that he can lift 200 pounds. All a very weird conversation. Inside her bakery, she transforms into Sister Night, and she heads to a trailer park where she assaults some guy and then goes to the precinct.
Boy, this music. Like that the beat she's kind of marching through the bakery in is literally get you out of bed and moving in the morning kind of music.
Yeah, and the driving scene for me too.
Yeah,
that music, it's very Knight Rider-esque. It's like Knight Rider meets Nine Inch Nails.
There is a couple of things I want to point out that we see as she's walking up to her bakery. There's a dude with a sign saying the future is bright, as opposed to end is nigh. Now the end is nigh sign was significant in the original Watchmen because you understand by the end that was actually Rorschach running around in plain clothes, doing surveillance.
Right.
And the first time I watched the movie, I was completely unaware of that fact, and it's cool to kind of rewatch it and knowing that that's happening. Should we keep an eye on this guy?
I think so. Yeah, just because of the pedigree, but like, I don't know if they're doing that as a nod and a wink, or if they're doing that as like something for the people in the know to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's like, it's just another, it could be equal but opposite Watchmen. Like, instead of being pessimist, everybody's like stupidly optimist. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, because what faction would he be in? Like, why would a cop do that? And if he's like working for the 7th Cavalry, why is some random Asian dude working for the 7th Cavalry in Oklahoma? That doesn't seem like the type they recruit.
Yeah.
But there's I freeze framed on the newspaper the old man was reading, and in addition to Veidt being declared dead, it says that the KKK vandals had closed the Statue of Liberty because they had vandalized it, and that a Boise squid shower destroys a homeless camp and kills 2. How does a squid shower destroy a homeless camp and kill 2 people?
I mean, if you get hit with squids and you're just living in a tent, I'm not sure how it kills you, but it could definitely destroy your tent.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's like, because I don't know, the psychic and the psychic squid. Like, I'm wondering how kind of like ESP and weird things are going to get, because I'm actually in the mood for some weird shit. I'm in the mood for like baby embryonic telepathic squids randomly killing 1 out of 1,000 people who are extra psychic squid sensitive.
All right, sending them to another dimension.
The EPSSs who are extra psychically sensitive to squid.
Yeah, and it's not out of Lindelof's performance envelope. So
not at all.
Here's another interesting thing, and this ties right into your hooded justice theory. In the beginning of the scene, when she pulls up to the bakery, there's this radio show or something that's going on about American Hero Story, which is hilarious. It's basically American Horror Story.
Yeah.
And this season is subtitled Minutemen.
Yeah.
But
Ryan
on
Murphy's
the
clearly
bus,
producing it. He's spoiling all of his plots on Twitter.
Right.
Yeah. Some things don't change no matter what timeline you're in.
But on the bus is a picture of Hooded Justice. As we go into a scene with Louis Gossett Jr., who we think might be Hooded Justice. You think specifically?
No, I was shocked that this wasn't a huge theory coming out of the Watchmen preview, because like he also dresses in Hooded Justice looking colors, and like his final reveal is a very Hooded Justice looking costume, and it just makes a lot of sense with
he's watching this young kid is watching Bass Reeves being the first black deputy marshal west of Mississippi, and like,
I mean, that's stuff we didn't know before the season was released, but like I still saw a lot of people kind of like pushing back on, well, it can't be. Now I will say
he's got that note in his hand at the end, like all of this stuff connects the dots to me.
Yeah, well, it connects him to being the same guy. It doesn't necessarily connect him to Hooded Justice, but I think he's Hooded Justice. The only thing against the theory, keeping in mind what Lindelof said about not retconning the comics, is we do get an extreme close up of Hooded Justice, where you can see his eyes and they're white.
Yes. Well, the skin around them is white.
The skin around
the eyes are white too, but
yes,
that's
as
pretty standard.
Most humans are.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. Now, there's a lot of ways you can explain that. It's entirely possible he's wearing whiteface under there. It couldn't be impossible that like maybe there's several Hooded Justices. There's also some people are saying it can't be true because like in the original Night Owls thought that he was like some kind of German strongman, but that was just a theory. Like it's definitely stated that no one is for sure knows his identity. So I don't know about the seeing the white circles around his eyes, but that's literally the only thing that would keep him not being a possibility for Hooded Justice at this point.
And maybe it's my bias of liking that theory, but if it turns out that he's not, they're really fucking with us in these scenes.
Well, I mean,
going right from a emblazoned bus, a hooded justice emblazoned bus, right to Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah, you're right. They're using all their powers as filmmakers to suggest this too, but they're also mini multi-generational heroes in the storyline, like Night Owl 1 and 2, Silk Spectre 1 and 2. So maybe there's a hooded justice 1 or 2, and they'll like explain it as something along those lines. So we'll have to see. But I'm all in on the theory. Why not?
Yeah. All right, we go to the precinct where they're watching a video, let's say, I don't know, manifesto for the 7K, threatening more violence against police. And Article 4 is enacted, which is an emergency authorization for 24-hour release of deadly weapons to the cops. Panda warns the chief this is a big mistake, but it happens anyway.
I love it. It's just a chubby dude in the panda,
and everybody
dirty panda mask.
Him, like, dirty panda mask.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Get that man a new mask.
So, like, Panda seems like he's very concerned about police overstepping their authority. And there's a lot of talk about, because like Angela in one of the trailers said that people want to see the world as like gray, but it's actually black and white. Panda literally is an animal that segregated its colors into exact black and white patterns.
Yeah.
Panda also, that makes him very similar to Rorschach's, mask. I wonder if they're doing something there, like the Looking Glass is the obvious Rorschach analog, but like Panda maybe. We'll see what kind of dirt's under that panda's fingernails. What I'm saying.
A lot of it, judging.
You got
by
a good
mask.
cop killed already.
It's true.
So what's going on, Panda?
Did you look up what they're chanting? Did you look up what that means?
TikTok?
No. This Keith's
yeah. It's in Latin for who watches the Watchmen.
It is,
and then their response is literally our podcast. We watch, I guess is.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I didn't have time to look that up.
Yeah,
cool. All right, then we move over to the chief's office where Angela asks him why she wasn't called sooner after the shooting, and she also drops the news that she preemptively rounded up a likely 7K suspect, and they decide to put him in the pod, ominously. I don't like this pod thing.
I don't like the pod either. I don't like all this extrajudicial shit that's going on. I thought it was interesting, the concept of this Nixonville, is I think that they're getting that there's a whole bunch of different homeless camps of like these ghettos of poor enclaves of poor white people living in tents and RVs because they don't have economic perspective, or they're homeless or whatnot. Because they mentioned, I think at some point, that Nixonville is this kind of like tent city, and then they mentioned that one getting killed by the psychic squid thing. So it's almost like this is like a nationwide thing, or at least maybe it's in the West or Midwest or something. But I don't know. Lindelof has got a knack for bringing creepy cults to life. Like, I thought the whole TikTok chant was really creepy.
Yeah.
In context.
Yeah, and he's done it with the Guilty Remnant before, so might like where this goes. All right, Looking Glass interrogates the man in the pod, which is a spherical room that displays images and sounds designed to elicit reactions during questioning. Afterward, Looking Glass claims that the guy knows where the 7K are, and Angela beats the location out of him. Find out he's on a cattle ranch.
The visuals are so cool. Like, in particular, when you see his face reflecting like the Confederate flag imagery, reflecting the Rorschach imagery was really, really cool. So is this the question I have, especially after I've read some of those PD files where it seems like the world is just awash in a whole bunch of pseudoscience because as a direct result of Adrian kind of fucking with everybody about Dr. Manhattan having cancer and whatnot, and now people are like distrustful of science.
Yeah. Is
this like a lie detector, in which case, I mean, it's mostly bullshit, or is this actually a science and like the Blade Runner's android test? Or
I mean, he talks about the dilation of the pupils and
who
things
gives
like
a fuck?
that, which
they talk about your heart rate and your galvanic skin response, and
it could have just been looking at a particularly
he's
bright
fucking
image
nervous
or
because he's
dark
staring
image.
at a faceless demon in a sensory overload tank. Like, the subject's eyes were dilated, he was palpitating, and his heart was beating 160 beats per minute. Like, no shit. I don't know.
It hardly seems scientific to me.
Yeah.
They just beat him emotionally, mentally, and physically until he they tell him.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. Clearly, this guy was connected to the 7th Cavalry and up to no good at all. But still,
yeah, we live in a society,
right?
No, I mean this is Jack Bauer, right?
Yeah.
Going to town on a terrorist to find out.
So I wonder if they'll show the flaw of this technique, because like this is like, reason no one cares, or reason everyone thinks Batman's a hero because he's a vigilante is because Batman is just a perfect cop and he's the world's greatest detective, and if he's beating the piss out of you, you deserve to have the piss beaten out of you or worse.
Right.
These people are not Batman, or at least I don't think they are. So like I wonder if they'll show this going wrong, where they'll do a Jack, because I'm pretty sure they did that like season 3 or season 4 of 24. Jack Bauer eventually got to ripping the guts out of the wrong person, or oh shit, this guy doesn't know anything about it. Now what do you do, Jack?
Yeah.
I wonder if they'll do something like that.
Just keep torturing more people.
That's right.
Until we find someone who is involved.
The beatings will continue until our police intelligence improves.
Yeah. No, it's a good question.
I want to go through all the questions this guy asked.
Yeah, I have a couple here.
If I shit on the American flag, how would that make you feel?
Confused is a pretty good answer.
Confused. Are you a member of the 7th Cavalry? Are interdimensional attacks hoax staged by our government? Should all Americans pay taxes? And he interspersed with that was a return to, are you a member of the 7th Cavalry? And then the images they showed were commercial art picture of a little boy drinking milk, the moon landing, a cowboy riding, a Vietnamese monk on fire, a Confederate flag, Nixon's face carved on Rushmore, Mount Rushmore.
I missed that one. Okay.
The American Gothic painting, an image of General Custer, famous for being killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Was it added to Mount Rushmore, or did they replace
I
someone
couldn't
with
tell.
Were there 5 or 4?
Because the guy's head was like, all I saw was like
blocked.
Lincoln, and then the dude's head, and then sure enough, Tricky Dick.
Okay.
And then they're working on Redford now. Then you got Rosie the Riveter, Harriet Tubman, an American flag, images of the KKK, the Twin Towers in New York City, which I thought was interesting. That could just be Manhattan.
Well, it's conspiracy stuff, right? It's the same reason they showed the moon landing.
But I bet in this world, 9/11 didn't even happen.
Yeah,
So it also could just be some world building. Like, hey, we saw the Twin Towers. Images of the psychic squids, black baseball team, a cross burning, Evel Knievel. Like, whose side is he on?
I mean,
is Evel Knievel good or bad? I mean, it's right there in the name, Evil, but I think Evil's kind of a cool guy.
Part of this whole
American
pod
hero
thing, I think, is just to confuse the person, just to get them off their game.
Yeah.
So that they can assess the truth.
Evel Knievel do that.
Yeah.
Black members of the military, white homeless people, black businessmen, a mushroom cloud, finally Nazi flags and Rorschach blots. So it's a visual feast, and Reznor really pumped the techno up to 11 in this scene too.
And that's just what's going on the walls, like on the mask.
Oh yeah.
Of Looking Glass, you've got the guy staring back into his own face. You've got the images bouncing off of that.
Yeah.
That's
a great mask.
Amazing. Yeah.
Someone pointed out that has to be a digital effect. Or they're doing something, because like if it's a literal like you'd see the camera and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, it's an utterly convincing effect if whatever they're doing.
All right, ready to move on?
Mm-hmm.
Although, what was she beating out of him in that room? I saw blood. I saw far too much water, which I assume was urine.
So this is another one I thought was a little too on the nose reference to the Watchmen. Is like, this is just a shot for shot remake of Rorschach killing the big figure in the prison riot. Like him going into the bathroom and the door swinging, and then the blood and the water come out, and he's flushing, disposing of what is it? Disposing of refuse with a sewer or something.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think she's beating the location of the person who shot the police officer, because there's like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he?
Yeah. It's in this compound, which
we're about to go to. Good thing this guy knew where he was, because this guy's not a super high member of the 7th Cavalry.
No.
So.
All right, we go to that ranch with the cops, including Angela, Red, and some others. They're spotted, which results in a cow and cop massacre. and the major players manage to survive, but they lose their airship and any leads in the process. This is an incredible scene.
It sure is. This guy, Looking Glass, Tim Blake Nelson, was also in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And one of my favorite scenes is where they're stuck with this insane kind of mobster figure, bank robber named George. And they're driving down the road, and to create a distraction from the FBI agents who are following him, he just takes his Tommy gun and just lays into this nearby group of cows. And the Looking Glass guy says, "Oh, George, not the livestock."
Cows. I hate cows worse than cappers. Oh, George, not the livestock.
This guy is involved in another cattle massacre.
Yeah. When will it end?
He's typecast, I'm telling you. He's typecast. This was an incredible scene.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen... a heavy machine gun turning cows to ground beef and like hiding behind their corpses, and
it was horrible, but also it was really well filmed.
Yeah, and sound design. Whatever they're doing to sell these bullets is like from a war film. Both in the intro and this scene, it's so good.
And there's a brief scuffle in this too with some pretty good choreography.
I thought the fights were
that's the beauty
excellent.
Of the masks, right? The masks allow you to sub in any number of stunt people for the heroes.
Yep.
You could have Jackie Chan under one of those masks, and he could be flipping over a table and eating a sausage.
Sure.
And yeah, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I do find it really hard to believe the chief would have survived this crash, or would have survived without basically any injuries. His shoulder is a little jacked up, but like... He wasn't strapped in. This is a hard metal cabin. That hits with a lot of force.
Yep.
And he just jumps up and laughs it off.
Well, it turns out he's not just working in some fashion for the 7th Cavalry. He's also in with gravity.
Yeah.
That's why it's like, a normal person...
I mean, if he's in with Dr. Manhattan, he could be in with
a normal
gravity.
person's afraid to, like, take a big fall like that to experience those kind of inertial G-forces. But if you got Sir Isaac on your side, you don't have nothing to fear. Yeah, that was a little bit of bullshit. Also, like, I have a lot of questions. Like, how the hell did they end up with Archie the airship in the first place? Is that the Archie?
Right.
Or did the Night Owl sell his technology? They mentioned in those PD files that he's in federal custody, so they could have just stolen his shit and just copied it for police work. I am confused.
It does make me wonder why it would be in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Well, like I said, everybody, everybody gets one. Plus, Tulsa's like ground zero for the 7th Cavalry stuff.
Oh, you're saying they copied it like a whole bunch of times.
Oh, yeah. Like every police force.
I thought they just took it out of the evidence locker.
What I don't understand is how the fuck this little prop plane gets away from Archie. Like, I thought it would easily be able to outdistance, and it would.
Yeah.
I also have other questions, like, why is Judd, Police Chief Judd, downing this plane if it's so important to the 7th Cavalry? Like, maybe, because that's the thing. I was like, I don't think maybe he was working for the 7th Cavalry. Maybe the 7th Cavalry was useful idiots for some other person he's actually working for, because it doesn't make sense that he would be thwarting their own plan.
Well, I mean, you've played Secret Hitler a lot, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of reasons why, if you're Hitler, you
was that him passing a liberal policy,
or
shooting a fellow fascist just to prove that I
do
can't be Hitler,
right?
Huh?
Look, I'm on everybody's side here.
Possible.
I don't know, but you're right. Well, we don't know the full extent of the lithium conspiracy, the lithium plot. So maybe it's not super important. Maybe it's just sort of tangentially important.
So one of the things I think you can be forgiven if you just watch this once is there's this thing about these batteries people are afraid they cause cancer. This goes back to the events of the original Watchmen, where one of the things that Adrian Veidt did to cripple Dr. Manhattan was to make the world think that being around him, his energy causes cancer. As a way to psychologically destabilize Dr. Manhattan. Well, it turns out the whole world's ran with that, so there was a lot of technological progress made by using Dr. Manhattan technology, and after the psychic squid attack, everybody's like, fuck this, and they were afraid to get cancer, and they stopped using it. In fact, it seems like technology took a good 20-year step back in time for until the late 90s because of that. So,
yeah, there's some mention of like a 30-year 5-stage plan to reintroduce the technology if it's deemed safe by the experts.
Yep. And I thought that was like, so when you hear these, I think where they're saying like M-class devices, there's a Manhattan class, or these were the old synthetic. So these are batteries, I guess, powered by Dr. Manhattan technology, and people are afraid to cause cancer. Now, the thing I didn't put together when I was thinking this through in the instant cast is, if the Minutemen, or I'm sorry, if the 7th Cavalry thinks that all that shit was a hoax, then it would imply that they don't think Dr. Manhattan technology would cause cancer. So why the fuck would they be getting a shit ton of it together to make a bomb with? Or I guess that was speculation.
The bomb is speculation, but clearly they're gathering it.
Yeah.
We know that much. I don't know. It could be a false flag.
Yeah.
It could be like a terror tactic, right?
Right. Well, I mean,
like
that's
if everybody is scared of that technology, using that technology to scare them would work.
Right, and also like these conspiracy theorists don't have all the best internal logic to some of their conspiracy theories, so they could believe that the squid attack was a hoax, but Dr. Manhattan absolutely also causes cancer.
Sure, yeah.
You know, even though that like that's all from the same kind of fruit of the poisonous tree.
Right.
I wonder if they're playing with that idea too.
Could be. I would look for that not to be his assessment of, they're making a cancer bomb, to not be entirely accurate.
Especially if he's working for that side of the team anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So then we go to somewhere else in the world. I don't know exactly where. An old man rides a horse into his castle where his chafed thighs are attended to by one of his servants.
Mrs. Crookshanks.
Another person presents him with an anniversary cake. It's all a very weird scene. He tries to give him a horseshoe to cut the cake with, which is really strange. The cake seems awful, and this guy gives up after one bite.
It's made with 90% beeswax. That's a problem.
Yeah. And then the servants present him with a pocket watch that they made for him from drawings he discarded. And he tells them he also has a surprise for them, a tragic play titled The Watchmaker's Son, in which they'll play the leading roles. Which, if you haven't realized by now, this is potentially Ozymandias. Most likely Ozymandias, although there are competing theories.
The evidence is he looks like what Ozymandias should look. The cake the cake was decorated in exactly his classic costume colors.
Like gold and purple, yeah.
Some even mentioned that like the purple flourishes on the top looks like a squid draped over it. So like there's another kind of a symbolism there. I mean, there isn't a lot of direct evidence other than Jeremy Irons just looks like he should be Ozymandias and that stuff, and he's obviously wealthy and he's the right age, but it is weird that
we don't see anyone else around him, so this could be some sort of isolation, and if they think that he's dead, then that would make sense.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like the Adrian Veidt being reported dead was because he had been missing so long that they're just kind of doing that to close out the book. So
right. This is all part of the PD files.
I don't know why they're being mysterious about it. Like it seems like at this point, if he's not Ozymandias, there ought to be a hell of a fucking twist to explain why they went to such trouble to make us think that he's Ozymandias.
Yeah, some people are speculating he's Dr. Manhattan in corporeal form or whatever. I don't really buy it.
I saw some crazy fucking theories.
Yeah. I think it's far more likely that they're working together because of the footage we see of him reconstructing his castle for some reason on Mars, right?
Yes.
And if you look at those castles, those are identical castles.
They are. Let's stop here for a minute. Let's talk about this anniversary. What is the anniversary cake all about?
That's a good question. Because
here's the thing. We talked about like it might be an anniversary of the Squid attack, right? As best I can tell, this is taking place around September 9th, 2019. The Squid attack was November 2nd, 1985. So we're nowhere near the actual anniversary of that event. The theory that I've got is that these servants that call him master are either robots or some kind of cloned replicant human. because we know he was a master of genetic engineering and technology, and that maybe he has already switched bodies, because he doesn't look exactly like the old.
So is this the anniversary of the Switch?
Yeah, like the anniversary of his getting his techno body or something.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
There's also the potential for these servants to be Dr. Manhattan's life that he was creating.
Yeah, some people,
which I think is interesting.
Yeah, some people mention that the butler looks a lot like Dr. Manhattan. And...
Well, the idea that he would not know that a knife is the appropriate tool to cut a cake with, and that a horseshoe might function, seems to me like, there's something just off enough to where a non-omnipotent, omniscient being might fuck up a thing or two.
Sure.
In a life form he's trying to create. And if they're working together, he might have, said, here, just take two of my artificial beings.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're not perfect, but they'll work.
Why would Manhattan create life in the form of humans, though?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I feel like that...
Because he himself is in the form of a human-ish?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing you can really falsify these theories at this point.
No.
Like, there's some that I like better than others. And the one I like the least is that Jeremy Irons is literally Dr. Manhattan incarnated.
Yeah.
And or there's another theory that he's cloned Dr. Manhattan and Jeannie, and he's going to try to re-engineer the circumstances to make. And I'm like, this seems very, very complicated and baroque for what and to what end. But I'm content to let the mystery be for now.
I mean, to that question, to what end? When I come away from this scene and the last line is that they're going to be playing the leading roles in this, I have to ask, what does he mean by that? What does he mean by these two sort of weird, possibly robot, possibly artificial life forms playing the leading role in The Watchmaker's Son, his 5-part tragic play?
Yep. That's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you got the crazy
mystery.
theories, is because people are just swinging like, how could that literally be true? Oh, I get it.
It's one of the big hooks for this episode. It's it's the Squid Rain,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of, the general world building. Mm-hmm. Then we move on to dinner with Angela's family and the Chief's family. The Chief is doing coke, apparently, which is an interesting revelation. Seems like he's burning the candles at both ends. Perhaps he's not getting much sleep.
Whoa.
They talk about how they missed Oklahoma, which brings out the revelation that the Chief was the star of it in his high school production and resulted in him singing a verse.
Why did Angela ditch Judd for the Oklahoma? Like, they had this really... I guess it doesn't matter because this guy's dead, but it's like... I wasn't sure why that moment was put in there.
Yeah. I don't know. Lighten things up a little with the song.
Maybe.
Make us feel sympathetic for this character before he's revealed to be a villain.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting also that, like, if this guy is some deep cover 7th Cavalry, like, how his cover goes so deep that he's, like, best friends / like, brother-sister relationship with Angela and Cal. Mm-hmm. And his wife seems completely oblivious that he might be working the other side. So I'm very curious to see exactly how this shakes out. Like, what it was his character. What are we going to find out about him in the weeks ahead?
Yeah. And then after dinner, Angela updates the Chief, telling him that they only found a bucket, or I guess a bag of old lithium batteries in the 7K hideout.
There's also really good, I like how as soon as he gets done singing the People Will Say We're in Love song, and you had that cute session or scene, the clock in the background begins ticking. Mm-hmm. Like ramping up the tension throughout.
There's a lot of clock stuff. The imagery of the chandelier.
Well, I was going to say, when
table,
and like his dinner napkin is kind of laying in the 5 minutes till midnight position, which I thought that was kind of like a funny clock face to begin with. But then when I noted like all the details, like, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's really good. There are so many nods, so many little nods to the fans of the comics and the movie in here that I really appreciated.
And he's still like, and because he seems like he's a little soft pedaling, or he's like trying to play the guy reluctant to commit to like all out war. Mm-hmm. But he does say that he's worried as fuck, but he's just such a mysterious character at this point.
I mean, it leaves me wondering what the mission is. Obviously the mission is racial superiority for these 7K guys. Mm-hmm. But they say there's a plan that's coming soon. I don't know what that is. I don't think any of us do. Another mystery.
Psychic Squid 2. They're putting all these batteries together to make a really, really bad Psychic Squid.
Yeah, I do get the feeling
But it's
that,
going to be a jet black one. So everyone will hate black Psychic Squid and blow the race war wide open.
Uh-huh. It's a good plan. All right. We get an animated sequence of the American Hero story, which transitions into the chief reporting the results of the 7K raid to the governor. He gets a page about the cop who was shot at the beginning waking up, and he heads out to deal with that. Unfortunately, along the way, his tires are blown out by a spike strip, and he's ambushed.
There's a couple other things that he was like when he gets in the car or the truck, he's listening to pretty far right radio.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe he's doing like reconnaissance, but that's like your first hint. That, and there's also this like
I
ominous.
mean, it's not your first hint; it's the music.
It's
man.
As soon as like you see the picture of this old guy that's a former sheriff with his little boy on his knee, they play this like terrible ominous audio cue. It's like uh-oh, and then he gets in there and he's listening to these far right radio guys. They're talking about Joe Jr., which is the son apparently of Senator Keene, who passed the Keene Act, which is the 70s legislation that outlawed masked vigilantes in the first place. Mm-hmm. So he's running for president. This is the context of Robert Redford serving for 7 terms is he's recently announced that he's not going to seek an 8th. So like this long-standing, liberal hegemony of the United States and kind of stasis politically is threatened to be turned around. And that's why there's a lot of tension. One of the reasons there's a lot of tension in the air. Yeah. I did think that like so Sheriff Judd gets stop stripped, and he's like way nonchalant about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, was there like I'm almost to the point where like was there a plan to ambush him and then it just went wrong? Because like he doesn't act scared, he doesn't act shocked. It's just like, were they going to stage something here? Is this going to be another false flag? Because they want to make you think the old black man killed him. It could just be that he was monitoring the situation and he brought the attention to Angela so she could find it before, it turns out on national news that somebody lynched the. But how would that help the 7th Cavalry? If you lynch the top cop of a police force that's very integrated, very mixed. He's best friends with one of the top cops that is also black. I don't see how it works out. But I can't explain, like, it's one thing to walk out of your stronghold thinking that you got not a care in the world because the 7th Cavalry's on your side. It's another thing to have your tires slashed and then get out in the middle of dark and be like, what the fuck going on? What? So
they do portray him in the entire episode as like even Regina King, Angela asks him like, why the fuck are you not concerned about this?
Right. And
he says he is, but he doesn't act like it most of the episode. And this is like, maybe this is his super fucking worried reaction, right? Like he's just constantly whistling and humming to himself and singing songs.
Yeah, ball nervous injury.
And something truly threatening happens to him, and then he just comes down a notch.
Yeah, he's
to where I
Brad
am on
Pitt's
my best days.
out of Ad Astra. He's like,
right.
Yeah.
His heart rate goes up to 72.
Yeah. When he's being killed by I don't know, a 105-year-old black man.
Yeah, I wonder if they're setting up like a Yoda fights Dooku scenario where like Louis Gossett Jr. is going to CG get out of his chair and just whip ass.
Yeah. His wheelchair is going to like break down into a complicated series of melee weapons and.
Right. Yeah.
It's got razor blades in those wheels. It's going to be a shit show.
Got me hyped. All right. Let's move on to Angela and her husband going at it.
They're fucking.
They sure are. Quietly. Very quietly. The kids are asleep. When she gets a call from the same old man who was outside her bakery telling her that she needs to see something by a big tree in like row fields or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. When she gets there, she finds the police chief strung up in the tree and the old man waiting for her. End of the episode.
Yeah, so he knows who Angela is, knows her father. I love the shotgun dispenser in her headboard.
Oh yeah,
it's like a Pez dispenser only for shotguns.
I was wondering if the husband was knew about her being a cop until this scene when she whips out the shotgun. I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
His reaction
No, he totally knew.
is not appropriate if he didn't know.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's also kind of a cool inversion that like you've got the concerned male dad left behind as the fearless female protagonist goes venturing off into the night. That was kind of cool.
It's like an inverse Independence Day.
Yeah. So yeah, this guy is sitting underneath this tree. He's wearing a very hooded Justice outfit. He just very, very prominently bragged about him being able to lift 200 pounds, or at least that's the inference. He has the note that the original boy had, watch over this boy. They had the badge with the drop of blood, paying homage back to the comedian's button for like the third or fourth time. There's owls hooting. There's a lot of stuff going on. What is the deal with the owls in this episode?
I'll be honest, I did not notice the owls.
So you got Archie, the owl ship.
Okay.
You've got Angela when we first see her in her sister night garb and she's having coffee in Sheriff Judd's office. She's drinking out of an owl cup mug. And this entire last scene there is owls hooting in the background.
Does he have an owl mug because he was Night Owl?
Are there
owls hooting because Night Owl just died?
There's a whole one of the issue supplemental materials in the Watchmen comics is an article that Night Owl 2 had written because he's like he was into owls. And he was like an amateur owlologist or whatever the hell we would call a person who studies owls. And there's a whole thing about him writing things about like how the owls are the perfect hunter and on all this. So he's like fascinated and obsessed with owls, obviously. And I wonder if they're hinting, at some kind of big Night Owl reveal later.
Could be. I mean, they do say Night Owl proper is in custody, right? Or I guess Night Owl 2.
Yeah. But he's old too. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like some kind of geriatric return of the original masks.
I mean, he could be Night Owl 3 for all we know, right?
Yeah. What do you think about? Do you think the Hooded Justice is So Hooded Justice one of his big things is he's like freakishly strong. Not like superhumanly, but like definitely like peak human, surprisingly strong. Do you think that do you think he's actually super and that like 105-year-old man can lift 200 pounds? Do you think that because I really don't think that he killed this guy.
I'm up in the air.
Although the hooded Black Justice cop in the beginning, the Bass Reeves, he did string that white corrupt cop up.
So, did he? Because he said there wouldn't be.
No,
any...
you're right. He lassoed him, but the townsfolk wanted to string him up. He said, but no, there'll be no mob justice. There'll be no mob justice today. Trust in the law.
Yeah, he was a lawman through and through.
Yeah. I read that in the real Bass Reeves, he brought over 3,000 felons to justice, only killed 10.
Yeah.
So he does seem like he definitely respected the rule of law rather than just
and they're all claimed to be in self-defense too.
Huh?
They're all claimed to be in self-defense.
I believe that. Like if he was wanting to kill people, he would have.
He'd probably kill more like 1,500.
Yeah, 1,500.
2,000.
Probably half those guys would have been easier to kill than take alive. Sure.
He just really liked the bigger bounty with him alive.
Yeah, he wants that alive bounty.
I mean, he's not a bounty hunter. He's a deputy marshal, for God's sake. He's not getting paid on commission here.
The sad thing is because so he's this like celebrated lawman of these Indian territories, and when Oklahoma became a state in like I think 1907. He was unable to continue his position as deputy marshal because the new state laws precluded black men as serving in that position.
Jesus.
Can you fucking imagine?
I would have killed a lot more than 14 people if I were him.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So there you go.
Yeah, and the song that plays over the credits, I guess, is a piece from Oklahoma. Poor Judd is dead.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it. Do you know much about Oklahoma? You're the musical guy.
Yeah, I've seen it. Didn't really much care for it.
Okay.
It's pretty It's all about Oklahoma becoming a state and how amazing that is, and it's essential. The story is about Curly and this guy Judd, who are dueling for affections of this particular girl. Judd is kind of like this backwards, socially inept, brutish guy that is the girl's farmhand, the woman's farmhand. And there's kind of a weird love triangle that she's afraid of this guy, so she doesn't want to break things off, but she kind of likes Curly too. And in the end, Curly and her get married, and Judd shows up at the wedding to try to like break things up and assault her, and he ends up dead in the altercation. And at the end, they have this like kind of show trial because they don't want this legal problem to impugn their honeymoon. So like they just have a show trial with the judge presiding with all the wedding guests as like jurors, and they just acquit him immediately.
Wow. And
it's kind of like as a comedy thing. So, but yeah, knowing that there is a lot of interesting things about kangaroo courts and because I also read in research that there's a production that did like an Oklahoma as like kind of framed it more darkly. This things were kind of fucked up in the town, and it is weird that we let mob justice rule, and this guy didn't get a fair trial, and that seemed like there's a lot of themes there that you could definitely play with in this Watchmen universe.
Yeah, I'll have to go do some reading about it for the next few episodes. And then I got a million things about PDpedia, but whatever. The PD files.
We should talk about that stuff.
Oh, okay. We've kind of sprinkled it throughout the episode, though. There's some very specific stuff about Vietnam.
Can we take a drink break? Because my throat is killing me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
That's good Red Bull. Ooh.
Okay. I'm just gonna come back in with the Vietnam stuff.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff around Vietnam in this episode, and also in these PD files.
Which you can if you want to follow along with this, there'll be a link in the show notes. But it's also the-pdpetey-files.com.
Specifically in this clipping of Veidt declared dead, there's a lot of information about it because apparently Veidt had a residence in Vietnam. There, after he disappeared, the company that bought up all of his companies is called, forgive me if I mispronounce this because I just saw it in writing, Triu?
I think it's actually, I looked up several like recountings of this legend on YouTube, and they said it's true. It's pronounced as true.
Okay. So yeah, this company came in after his disappearance, bought up all of his companies. True is actually a Vietnamese surname, but it is also associated with Lady True, who is sort of a Vietnamese Joan of Arc character, who sort of resisted Chinese occupation for a while until
like the third. And this is like these civilizations are ancient, so we're talking about
200,
like the 3rd century.
Yeah, it's super old stuff. And it's probably mythological. It's probably not even like a real person, stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot of connections to Vietnam, just like Joan of Arc. Yeah. And apparently the governor of Vietnam, I don't know if that's an official title. I'm not familiar with their political structure.
They're communists, Jim. We had a whole war about it. Jesus Christ. They're the 51st state. No.
Are there governors in communist countries? I don't know.
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. Yeah, but he claimed that Adrian Veidt was assassinated by this Vietnamese Liberation Front, as maybe some political power play or something.
Right. Like the 3 years into his disappearance, they like essentially took credit for it.
Yeah, it's like 2 years before the show started.
Yeah.
So before current day in the show. Yeah, so there's a lot of just like either coincidental or conspiratorial stuff, however you look at it, around Vietnam in this show and in these files.
And the interesting thing about that True Industries is they acquired a lot of Veidt Industries assets after he was declared missing.
Yeah.
And in the little flyer about the Trust in the Law movie, that's so the Trust in the Law movie is a fictional movie that we opened with, and in the series of the Watchmen, that opened the week before the Tulsa massacre, and it was thought lost to history, but has recently been recovered and restored, and now they're showing it at the exact same theater it was shown in Tulsa back, and they're doing it 4 times a day. And it's being displayed with this new projector technology that's certified Dr. Manhattan free. And it's made this FDTA, Food, Drug, and Technology Administration approved projecting technology was made possible by a grant from True Industries.
All right.
So True seems like it's the latest front. This is the Pyramid Corporation all over again.
Could be. Yeah.
Is the kind of leading theory everybody's going with.
But then Angela's mixed up in this a little bit too, right? By way of having grown up in Vietnam.
Sure.
Is she involved in some kind of thing? You know, where does that put her in this equation? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we're supposed to. But it is interesting.
Do you think so? Some people are speculating, just like the Watchmen original comic series and the full boat director's edition has this framing device of Tales from the Black Freighter, which is this pirate adventure story that is like this kind of like dark heart of vengeance kind of tale. People are wondering if like the Black Marshal or Oklahoma itself will be the framing device for this season. Like, are we going to see like different parts of the Black Marshal, and it's going to be relevant to what we're about to see, and we're going to open with those, or are we going to open with a different meaning, like a segment of Oklahoma that has a special meaning?
Oklahoma might be tough because it was like in world.
That's what and Oklahoma's a real thing. Like you have to work with what they give you. Whereas if there's a fictional silent movie like the Black Freighter, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can have that thing fit your narrative like a glove.
Yeah.
So I would like that. I think that'd be cool.
It feels to me like Vietnam is going to sort of be this show's Axis Mundi, or however you say it. Yeah. Like as it was to Leftovers, right?
And I think we hinted this in our pre-recap discussions, but there's also a file in this PD files about the FBI reintroducing computer technology to the bureau because society's become extremely technophobic with all this Manhattan technology deemed as being carcinogen or cancer-causing. Dr. Oz is the U.S. Surgeon General, and he's like certifying technology is safe.
Are you kidding me?
No, that's actually in these files.
I missed that.
And also, like, the reason that we went away from cell phone technology is people associated this newly, like, starting to integrate wireless communication technology in society that was causing interdimensional fields to weaken.
Right. Yeah,
and inviting. We're just asking to be attacked by psychic squids. But yeah, that's the other. So the other thing is that Agent PD is very concerned about the FBI not saying that Adrian Veidt is dead.
No, them declaring him dead.
Yeah,
is what he's concerned about.
Yeah, he doesn't want them to do that because he says if you close the case, it's going to embolden the white supremacists because Ozymandias figures into their conspiracy theories, which are actually true. And they want kind of justice for their hero, Rorschach, and if they declare him dead and they're stopping the investigation, that might embolden them. They also they say that like these masked heroes are rated on the Wortham Spectrum tool, which they don't elaborate, but it's like some kind of like what's that Briggs-Meyer personality test thing where like Rorschach is an objectivist / sociopath, Ozymandias is a savior / narcissist. Night Owl's a thrill seeker / nostalgic. Comedian is a super soldier / nihilist. I'm like, what use of a diagnostic tool is there if everyone gets its own unique diagnostic? Like how many fucking thrill seeker nostalgic types were there? Huh? How many super soldier nihilists were there? I would like to know. Also, that Lori, after like in from 1985 to 1995. When her and Dan were practicing superheroes again, she went by the name Comedienne.
Right. Yeah. I guess developed a newfound appreciation for her father.
And took his last name. And there's a lot of friction internally because she's working for the FBI, but the FBI is also tasked with counter vigilante measures, and she was a former vigilante, so it seems like there's a doctrinal rift within the FBI about whether she's a great resource or she's more trouble than she's worth. She disagrees with all this categorization, and there's a lot of really cool, interesting information. The fact that there's 2 Rorschach journals. This is
one of them being
the central conspiracy theories, like the one that the police recovered when they arrested him at Morlock's place, which was heavily
just gibberish.
Yeah, it's just gibberish or heavily encoded, and then one is very neatly and plain written that lays out all of this, accurate facts about what Ozymandias and Pyramid Corporation did, but it offers no proof.
And then I love the color they give to the interim between the Watchmen times and now, and how sort of Rorschach became a symbol, right?
Yeah,
like it was taken by these New Frontiersmen paper, and sort of they had particular views on things, and they translated it, Rorschach's journal, through their own lens, right? And it sort of inspired this conspiratorial angle and people then latched onto it and ran with it with this melded like Rorschach / racist vibe that the New Frontiersmen gave to it.
There's a couple other like terms of art, like they refer to DIEs, their dies, as dimensional incursion events. Like those are like the I think squid storms and whatnot, and they refer to squids as EDBEs, which I'm going to assume is an extra dimensional biological event, maybe.
Okay.
Because
I was confused. They
explain the DIE, but they never do the EDBE, and they also typo it. It's EBDE in some places.
Oh, Jesus.
The other thing that he said is like the nightmare scenario is if they declare him dead and he comes back to life, and he makes an offhand reference like, remember how much egg we had on our face when Elvis walked into a Hanoi nightclub and started performing again after being so like Elvis
did
is
all
alive.
of his songs with the name Blue, and then when the Blue Wave was starting, it's like
Yeah, so there's a lot of really cool world building stuff. If you haven't got a chance and you got 15-20 minutes to read it, this is the stuff that's between the Watchmen comic book the comic book issues. So if you skipped them when you're reading the Watchmen comics, you could probably skip them now, but there are a lot of good stuff in there, and we'll link it in the show notes. Shall we get the feedback, Jim?
Yeah, let's do it.
Can I take another drink break real quick? And also,
good.
What is our email's Watchmen@baldmove? Okay. If you'd like to send us feedback on this podcast, it's super easy to do so.
Can you just start that over? I was thinking.
Sorry. If you'd like to send us feedback on this podcast, it's super easy to do so. Just send an email to Night Watchman to Watchmen. Forget the night part.
Sister Watchmen.
It's nope.
Watchmen sister?
Nope. It's just Watchmen.
Shit.
Just Watchmen. Watchmen@baldmove.com, or we also have episode discussion threads on our forums, forums.baldmove.com. First off is Joseph Ferreira. I hope I didn't butcher your name. If so, phonetically spell it next time, and I'll do better. I've been a big fan since early Breaking Bad days, and can't thank you enough for all the great content over the years. Well, thank you, Joe. As a small token of my Bald Move and Watchmen fandom, I crafted together some Watchmen-inspired music for the new pod. Joseph, we are thrilled that you did so because we were hurting for some theme music, and since you seem to be on board with the idea, we're using it for our theme music. So thank you. It's great, and
check out the link in the show notes. I assume
you
throw that up. No,
he did not provide a site to show off his work or whatnot. But if you want to throw something together, like a SoundCloud or whatever, we'll throw those in the show notes because we appreciate it. And we'll play the whole piece as the end credits on this podcast if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Zach, so originally when you had the Hooded Justice theory, I was dead set against it. I was going off the story put in Hollis Mason's autobiography where he said Hooded Justice was a German. And I believed it enough where I took it as canon and was upset they'd retcon it. However, one thing that stuck out for me from later in the book was the fact that Hollis was an admitted fascist, which just went completely under the radar in a super Nixonian America. Of course, it would make sense that he would project his whiteness onto every other superhero. Knowing that Hollis is probably just blinded by his racism cleans up the Hooded Justice theory, and now I love it. Yeah, the only problem I see is that close inset of him having the whites around his eyeballs. But there's a million ways you could justify that as like that being Hollis Mason's memory that they're illustrating. And it's, you know, also it's like super not easy. It's super not hard to put some foundation around your eyes. I mean, Batman does the reverse. I've seen Michael
Angela's
Keaton movies.
doing the makeup mask.
Yeah.
In this. Yeah.
See, it's right there on the screen, Jim.
Yep.
It's foreshadowing.
Sure.
It's literally eyeshadowing. Okay? They're foreshadowing the eyeshadow. Hooded Justice is a 105-year-old man. You guys are just going to have to deal with it. Yusuf found the tone of the show to be excellently balanced, 50% Lindelof and 50% Watchmen. I'm in it for the Lindelof since I was a huge Leftovers fan, but I enjoyed the balance nonetheless. I noticed they used 2009's Watchmen's cast likeness in that animated spot that was playing before the police chief left his quarters to be assassinated. I mean, it's clearly Negan's face there when they panned by the comedian, and the mom from Haunting of Hill House when they panned by Silk Spectre. Kind of throws me off since we know we're not supposed to think of this show to be in the same canon as the movie due to the major difference in how Veidt stopped the nuclear showdown between the U.S. and the USSR, which brings me to the question, am I missing something, or is that the only difference between the graphic novel and the 2009 movie? The changing from Psychic Squid to Dr. Manhattan Energy is the only difference that Lindelof has embraced and actually called attention to.
Okay.
So,
and he's aware of that change. I haven't read all the comic though.
Yeah. So as far as I didn't get too hung up because I thought that was kind of interesting too. But the way I see it is, in this universe, maybe The Watchmen is actually a movie based on the events of the Minutemen stuff. And so that these are how the characters are popularly imagined in this universe as well.
Okay.
Kind of like the same way, like, you see that, you know, the Marvel movies, like the version of Captain America's uniform is inspired by the comics. But it's more realistic, and that stuff tends to go feed back into the comics. Like, you'll start seeing modern Captain America starting to look like Chris Evans' Captain America. You definitely see modern Iron Man looking like Tony's, you know, the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man. So I think that would be a cool way to imagine it. Just like, hey, you know, they changed the Psychic Squid to Dr. Manhattan because, you know, the squid is kind of unbelievable and a plot hole anyway, so you know they took dramatic liberty with it.
Strange in a world where squids are falling from the sky.
Maybe it's too soon. People don't like don't like to be reminded of the psychic squids. It's better to just hate Manhattan. But yeah, no, it's like I don't think he's got anything against Zack Snyder's Watchmen. It's just like he wants to he sees the comic as the absolute canon. And then where the movie does not disagree with the comic, then it is canon as well. Barry C. Leftovers is my favorite show of all time, and Watchmen is my favorite comic book movie, so I'm super pumped so far. I agree about The Leftovers. It is my favorite show too, Barry. As a Watchmen fan, I like seeing references to the movie in the comics, but I actually got the impression that if you were a Leftovers fan with no Watchmen knowledge, this first episode might have been even more enjoyable. It was so curious and bizarre in a Leftovers way, and it certainly felt more like Leftovers and Watchmen. Do you think this show will be easy to follow for people who have not seen the show? Not seen Leftovers? I do. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you have to see Leftovers to follow this.
Yeah.
I think certainly it would be helpful to have read either the Watchmen comic or seen the movie.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of bad faith shitting on this episode in some of these reviews, but I also can see if you are only a fan of The Watchmen from Zack Snyder's film and you watch this, you're like, what in the fuck? Because, you know, it's just got a lot of that Leftovers, Lindelof kind of weirdness DNA to it.
I mean, the squids alone would be what the fuck.
But then again, the fucking comic book had the daddy squid, so like, what the fuck can it possibly be?
But you said if you'd only seen the movie, right?
Okay, yeah, if you've only seen the movie,
that
or
would
if you went in completely blind, I guess that would be interesting. How many people are going to this just, you know, well, I've heard about the Leftovers and I've heard about Watchmen. I haven't seen either one. Fuck it.
I don't know, but I do think the mystery would be probably more interesting because I think the way we're approaching it is we want to see how the mystery ties back into what we know of the comics and the movie. But for somebody who's new to that stuff, they would just be going, what is happening?
Just all really cool world building and lore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, because like I said, I'm a fan of all the material, so like, I'm really appreciating it. I couldn't say whether people would appreciate it more or less, depending on their experience. Pierre, I'm thrilled to have you guys in for the long haul from season 1. This episode had me on my toes the entire time, never really sure what character or ideas it's wanting me to sympathize with. Pierre, calves of steel. He's on his toes the entire time. That's an hour. Those you sick calf pump. I noticed a handful of things that jumped out at me right away. Your calf definition. Superman and his cousin, Supergirl, Hooded Justice, has superpowers. Seems like he can still lift 200 pounds at his advanced age. Would also explain him carrying a baby some distance at the age of 6 or 7. And his dad did say, be strong. That's okay. That's interesting. Can we talk about this guy's last name? Or would you consider that a spoiler?
The emailer?
No,
The character?
not the emailer.
Okay.
The little kid from the survivor of the Tulsa incident. The old man at the end of this episode.
Okay, so from what I understand, in one of the previews, there is a subtitle that says what this kid's name, or what? No, it says what the old man's name is.
Yes,
and we're assuming, obviously, based on the episode, that this is the same person as the young kid.
Yeah.
I guess if you don't want to hear it, jump ahead a little bit.
Yeah, because it's just like we have like one more feedback left.
Right. Oh, okay, yeah. If you don't want to hear it, see you next week.
Yeah. So his last name is Reeves, just like Bass Reeves.
Yeah.
In my reading about Bass Reeves, I found that he was like, especially for his day, kind of a hulking, impressive physical specimen. He stood at an imposing 6'2". He was said to be very sturdy. He never was wounded in all of the gun battles he was in and all the felonious apprehension he was doing. And he has, had attained this like modern myth of being like a super strong too. And like some of the legends about him. So if this guy's like a descendant of Bass Reeves, maybe he's got a little bit of that, I'm not saying he's like literally superhuman, but he's you just don't want to fuck with him.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't even necessarily have to assume that he's descendant from, whatever Superman legend that Bass Reeves is.
Yeah.
If he's Hooded Justice, you could also assume this "be strong" comment may have been the thing that pushed him toward that. Like that combination
That's
of
the
like
last thing your
crime
dad
fighter
said.
and "be strong," he became obsessed. With getting fucking swole.
Yeah,
and he did it.
Then like from the age of 7, he was hitting them bricks.
Yeah,
he was
lifting babies two at a time.
Lifting babies. He's just curling babies left and right. Yeah, I could see that. Like if that's the last thing your dad said before he shot you off from Krypton and died, then that would echo in your ears over the years for sure.
Probably.
And he's at 105 years to add mass.
Right. Right.
So the Pierre continues. I'm all in all, I'm most stumped with Vite. Are his servants clones, results of his genetic experiments like Bubastis? Of course, that's his weird-looking cat
thing.
Is he now one of them? Is he in a simulation? Did Dr. Manhattan recreate them? Given the final result of the King of Kings in the poem, I expect to see his great work has crumbled, and we may see him having done the same by the end, even if nothing really ends. I can't wait for more. This was an amazing pilot. Keep up the great coverage. Many thanks. Ooh, you're welcome, Pierre. And yeah, those questions are the things we want to get answers to as well. I would suspect we're gonna have to wait a while for some of those answers. Those feel like those feel like Act 4 or 5 in the Watchmaker's Son play. Kind of answers to me.
All tragic. I am excited because I know that Lindelof has said these stories do intersect at some point. Like they are not parallel.
They have to
stories. Yeah.
Peter, I'm really excited for the show. Like A.Ron, I read the graphic novels in the last 4 or 5 weeks and rewatched the movie last week and listened to your guys' coverage. Really look forward to the discussion around the series. A.Ron used the word polar or opposite or mirror in the Instant podcast, talking about the world of the Watchmen. To me, this doesn't seem like a directly opposite type of situation. My current primary question is, how did the series of events in this world lead to a majority of cops in a town being black but still having a white sheriff? There's definitely some sort of inversion going on, but it's not a direct one. I guess I'm trying to figure out why we still have right-wing conservatism containing racism to an extremist level, but we now have the vast majority of cops being black. I mean, if we're being honest, I think those sentences make perfect sense. Like, if the majority of cops in this country were just instantly, like, if 75% of the cops in this country were black, like, today, like, overnight, or even over the course of the next 5 or 10 years, it would absolutely inflame and piss off a segment of our society that's already pretty inflamed and pissed off 24/7.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, people would have a big problem with that. I mean, that's people having a big problem with blacks becoming integrated in society is like the subtitle of America.
Yeah.
You know, America
People fighting
really
against
fucked
that
up with our
happening.
race relationships, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to connect the Keene Act to the Rorschach journal leak to the illusion of world peace because we avoided certain death by alien squid creatures and the masked black cops now needing to wage war against a masked right-wing extremist. I mean, we don't know. I think the big thing is, like, imagine, so you got a lot more black law enforcement. You've got this reparations kind of thing where that's going to make, you know, already people think that, like, you know, equal opportunity and things like those types of acts are already stacking the deck against whites.
Yeah, affirmative action, stuff like
Affirmative action. Now you're just going to just give handouts, and they're not going to have to pay taxes. You add that, and then you add to the fact that these people also believe, turns out correctly, that there's been a vast conspiracy to strip the world of its free will and lie to them to attain some kind of charade of peace. And that's, so yeah, like the politics of the police, I think, are going to be really interesting to uncover. And like, why was, if Judd's a bad guy, why was he a bad guy? Is he actually working for the 7th Cavalry? Is there, or the 7th Cavalry kind of useful idiots for powerful government or corporations to exploit? That's the stuff I think is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, we'll see about all this stuff in future weeks.
Yeah, we'll be back, of course, every Sunday night after the 9 p.m. airing of The Watchmen. We will be with our Instant Take podcast that dovetails into our Instant Talk podcast. If you're a club member, you can watch both of those live, and you can participate in the Instant Talk podcast. There's a link published several minutes before that goes live on baldmove.com. Check it out. If you'd like to send us feedback, you can do so at watchmen@baldmove.com, or again, get on our forums.baldmove.com. We'll be back next Sunday night for an Instant Talk and Instant Take podcast, and next Tuesday for full coverage of episode 2. Until then, I'm your host, A.Ron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.